Acceptance and values. Hello, and welcome to the Let Your Values Be Your Guide program. This is a 5-week program aimed to help people like you who are in cardiac and pulmonary rehab make meaningful and long-lasting changes. What we know is that making changes in rehab can be hard, especially when those changes don't necessarily fit with your values or what's important to you. Sometimes we have other priorities in life that we would like to focus on more. During your journey during rehab, we're going to accompany you where you will learn about your personal values and identify different ways to incorporate what's important to you in your day-to-day. You will also learn about practicing acceptance and compassion, which means kindness to yourself as you're making these big changes in your life. With each topic that we cover, you will encounter something new, and we encourage you to approach each and every lesson with openness and curiosity. We will be there to help you in case you need any help or support. During today, we're going to reflect on your goals and what's important to you and learn about practicing acceptance and compassion for yourself. We want you to get the most out of this program as possible. Therefore, with each lesson, we encourage you to do the practice exercises in your workbook. These exercises should not take more than 5 or 10 minutes of your time. It's important that during each session, you try to follow along in your workbook and complete those reflections by filling in the answer blanks and complete the brief practice exercises. This is so that you can start practicing the strategies that we talk about in your day-to-day life to help you. So for each of the 5 weeks, there's going to be an overview of the topic we're going to be discussing, some practice exercise, and some reminders and opportunities for you to ask questions. If you're watching our pre-recorded videos, we encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions about the content. We want you to reflect on things that you learned during the sessions and start trying to make some changes in your life with openness, curiosity, and kindness to yourself at your own pace. Today's lesson is covering acceptance and values. During today's class, we will discuss ways that lacking acceptance can get in the way from you living the life you want to live, and how exploring things that you find meaningful in life can help you make big changes. First, let's take a moment and ask ourselves, what comes to mind when you think of acceptance? In your mind, what does it mean to be accepting of something? Take a moment to think about that. When we think of acceptance, acceptance does not mean that you have given up or that you're okay with what you're going through. And it does not mean that you are not having any painful thoughts or feelings. In other words, acceptance does not mean approval. Acceptance to us means being open to painful or uncomfortable experiences as they come. Instead of avoiding these experiences, fighting them, or getting overwhelmed by them, we let them be and learn to manage them. This does not mean that we like them, but simply we make room for these experiences. Take some time to think about some problems you're facing that are holding you back from living the life that you truly want to lead. Take some time in your workbook to write these down and think about how trying to avoid these problems is really getting in the way of what's meaningful to you. Consider the following example. Imagine you're walking down a beach and then suddenly you find yourself stuck in quicksand. I don't know if any of you have ever been in quicksand before, perhaps not, but when you get into quicksand, you start sinking down into the sand. You start going down, down, down. And so the natural reaction when you start sinking is to try and get out. And the natural reaction for how to get out is to try and push yourself out. So what do? You struggle, you fight, you try and push as hard as you can and try to get out of that quicksand. You might start trying to run. And as you're using your feet and hands to get unstuck from the quicksand, the harder you try, the more effort you put into getting out of this quicksand, the faster you sink down into it. Then a wise person passes by and says, "Hang on a minute. Instead of trying to struggle, try something different. Stop struggling and actually not only stop struggling, but try and open your body out flat onto the quicksand. The more you can open your whole body out and be fully in contact with the quicksand without trying to struggle, then you'll stop sinking. And then you'll become unstuck and you can roll out safely. This feels very counterintuitive because when you're sinking in quicksand, the last thing you want to do is sink even further. So you're scared that if you stop struggling, it's not going to work. But you've had no other approach, so you decide to try something radically different. Instead of struggling, you open your body out, and lo and behold, you actually stop sinking deeper into that quicksand. In fact, you completely stop sinking, and you're able to focus, look around, and then you can roll out. This is sort of like dealing with uncomfortable experiences. What you may find is that when you have feelings of distress, you want to get rid of them. It almost becomes like quicksand. You try and push it away, you fight it, you struggle with it, and then it becomes stronger. And when you're trying to push it away a bit more, it may work for a little bit, but then you find that there's another moment where it becomes even stronger or overwhelming. So, although it may feel counterintuitive or against what's common sense, to stop trying to struggle, fight, or push away that feeling of distress, what if you allow it to be there? What if you lie flat in full contact with the quicksand and allow yourself to feel the sensations? You might even bring some curiosity into the experience. Notice what your body feels like. Notice the shape, the color, the texture. Is the sensation becoming bigger or smaller? What can you be aware of, knowing that it will pass away like all emotions do? You start to relate to that feeling in a different way. Rather than avoiding it, you allow it to be. You're willing to feel it so that you can continue to do what you need to do. Being diagnosed with a chronic illness like heart or lung disease can be really difficult. It's normal to experience distress and difficult emotions after receiving a diagnosis of a chronic illness. However, you can learn to manage these feelings and live a fulfilling life despite having a chronic illness. Think about some ways that you already deal with having a chronic illness. In other words, how do you cope with it? Chronic illness often comes with many challenges such as pain, uncomfortable feelings like being out of breath, fatigue, or being tired, and restrictions on what you can and cannot do or eat. Think about how your life has changed since being diagnosed with a chronic illness. The goal of acceptance is to build a life that is rich and meaningful around illness, pain, and negative thoughts and feelings, rather than trying to build a life that's free of these experiences. As we know, we can't necessarily build a life that's completely free of pain, illness, stress, etc. But we can have a meaningful life despite these experiences. Learning to live and effectively manage chronic illness allows for more time and energy to devote to the things that you find valuable, or in other words, the things that you find most meaningful in your life. I want you to think about what you would say in response to the blank below. So, I have heart or lung disease, but I can still what? Take a moment to think about the things that you still enjoy to do and the things that you still can do that mean a lot to you since being diagnosed with a chronic illness. As we've mentioned before, cardiac and pulmonary rehab is all about making changes. Many of you who are here today are being asked to make big changes to your lifestyle, such as eating healthier and exercising more. Some of these changes may come easy to you, but many may not. Most of these changes are not easy, especially if those changes that you're making are unpleasant or cause you some discomfort. For example, something that's common with folks at rehab is exercising can cause you to feel more out of breath, or your heart to beat faster, or for you to feel perhaps some pain in your joints. And these experiences can be scary and uncomfortable, and that is normal. It's hard to make these changes also if they don't fit with your personal values or what's important to you. And what we mean is, if you're trying to make big lifestyle changes, but perhaps there are other more pressing priorities in your life, it's hard to focus on what your doctor may be recommending to you. So what exactly are values? When we think of values, we think that values are a way of living that's important, rewarding, and fulfilling to you. It's your judgment of what you care about the most. Your values come from your life experiences or good memories that you've had. And your values guide what's going to feel most meaningful, enjoyable, and fulfilling to you. In other words, when we are living a life where we are continuously trying to prioritize what's important to us, then we are happier and we are healthier. Unsurprisingly. Take a moment to consider what's important to you in a variety of different areas in your life. Take a look in your workbook on page 10 for some questions to help you start thinking about what's important. Also, feel free to turn to the back of the workbook for some examples of personal values, as well as some daily activities that you can do that align with those values. Take a moment to circle some that you feel like make the most sense for you, and maybe write in your own. Let us know if you need any help clarifying what is most important to you. Let's discuss some different examples of values. Some of these examples may resonate with you, but of course some may not, which is why it's important for you to think about your own personal values or what's most important to you. Remember, turn to the back of the workbook and circle some values that you feel like fit with your life the most. Let us know if we can help you identify your personal values or what's important to you. On this slide, you'll see different examples of personal values underneath the buckets. Some examples are overcoming challenges, independence, health, and family. We want you to think of values as the buckets that we're filling based on what we do. You'll see the water drops over the buckets represent different activities that we can do to fill those buckets. Think of this example. If you are someone who enjoys or values overcoming challenges, maybe completing a crossword puzzle is something that you can do to feel like you have overcome a challenge that day. Maybe you value independence. In other words, maybe doing things like shopping for yourself, cooking, gardening, all of those activities that help you maintain that independence are things that help you fill that bucket. And how about family? If you value family, maybe eating Sunday dinner together is something that your family does so that you can spend time together. Now take a look at health. Notice that it's a little rusty, and notice that this represents sometimes, even though something is important to us, like our health, sometimes we don't necessarily have the time or the energy to devote to it. In other words, sometimes we're not prioritizing certain things that are important, even though we find them meaningful. If we've never needed to pay attention to a value before, we should choose activities that help fill our favorite buckets along with our neglected buckets. So think of the following example. So let's say you want to focus more on improving your health. An activity that can help you fill that bucket could be going for a walk with family. But notice that that one activity of just going for a walk with your family can also fill two other buckets. Going for a walk with family can help you maintain your independence by helping you get stronger. And going for a walk with family can also help you spend some quality time with your family members. So notice, you're getting the most bang for your buck. Now consider this example. Again, you're trying to improve your health which is why you're focusing on that neglected bucket. And you're trying to pick an activity that fills other buckets that are really important to you. So let's say you talk with your doctor and you let them know that you're ready to increase your exercise intensity in rehab. So in other words, you want to push yourself a little bit harder as you go to rehab. So not only does that help improve your health by helping you get stronger, but that also in turn helps you maintain your independence, and it helps you overcome a challenge. So in other words, increasing your exercise intensity and continuing to go to rehab helps you fill all three of those buckets, all while improving your health. In page 12 in your workbook, I want you to write down some of your values or what's important to you underneath those buckets. Think of some activities that help fill multiple buckets, including that health bucket. Let us know if we can help you figure out some activities that can fill multiple buckets at once. As we end for today, here are some questions for you to consider when you're trying to think of what's most important to you. First, think about what is most meaningful to you and ask yourself, is what I'm doing or the actions that I take, are they in line with what I value? In other words, do you have any neglected buckets that you want to fill? Think of a certain life area that you would like to focus on over the next week. And try to think of activities that would help you fill that bucket. So for example, let's say you haven't been spending as much time with your family as you would like. Maybe that is your neglected bucket you want to focus on over the next week. Maybe going for a walk with your family, watching your favorite TV show with a family member, or simply calling a family member you haven't spoken to in a long time. Perhaps those are some activities that you can use to help you fill that bucket. Try and come up with your own examples, and if you need help, turn to the back of the workbook for some examples of activities to help you fill your neglected buckets. Now, ask yourself, how do you want to be with your friends, your family, community, despite the challenges that come with having a chronic illness? So in other words, what kind of a person do you want to be? How do you want to see yourself? And how do you want others to see you despite the challenges of having a chronic illness? Try and think of activities that can help you live a life that is in line with how you would like to live. Ask yourself, how does attending rehab support your goals in life? In other words, we often attend rehab because we're told by our doctors that it can improve our health, which of course is true. However, let's dig a little bit deeper. What else does rehab help you gain in life? By being active in rehab, does that help you maintain your independence? Does it help you get back to work? Or simply, does it help you feel like you're more in control? Think about what rehab does for you and why it's important for you to continue attending. This can often be helpful when you're not feeling necessarily motivated to keep coming, because we all know that rehab can sometimes be hard. And lastly, what is one activity that ties your personal values or what's important to you with your goal to come to rehab? For example, walking with family members to exercise more and spend time with family is something that we can do that ties your value of family with your goal of increasing your exercise. That example may resonate with you, but it may not. And therefore, we encourage you to look at the back of the book for examples so you can start thinking of something that's important to you. Thank you for joining us today and listening in. This is our summary of what we have talked about. Acceptance just means making room for painful and uncomfortable experiences and living a life as fully as possible despite the experience of having a chronic illness. Remember, we're happier and healthier when we live according to what's most important to us. Keep in mind, We want you to review the workbook so you can get the most out of this lesson. Join us next week for the next lesson, which is cognitive diffusion, or in other words, getting space between you and your thoughts. And remember, keep answering questions on your phone, and if you have any trouble, please let us know, and we will help you as much as possible. Thank you and have a great day.